Our next panelist is Kent Biffle, who was then a reporter for the Dallas News, now is a columnist for the Dallas News. In between, he worked with me for a while at Newsweek. Kent was in a motorcade that day, and I know you were in the school book depository building. Tell us a little bit about that, if you will, Kent.
Well, I was going to, I feel like a kind of a truth squad following up Tom Allier. Now, actually, he set the scene pretty well there in the school book depository building. We went in with the first wave of policemen, really, and they immediately sealed off the building, and so we had it all to ourselves. For the first, 2 or 3 hours after the assassination, we got really tired of looking at each other. But we were, there were some things going on. Of course, the crime lab people were investigating, and I remember I was worried when we first went in. I was afraid that a policeman was going to shoot me because these guys all had their guns out and they were nervous. And I remember once stepping out of an office where I'd interviewed some office workers on the second floor, and there was a policeman at one end of the hall and another at the other end of the hall, and they both had riot guns, and they both threw down on me when I stepped out in the hall. But I never worried much about the assassin, because I kind of had a theory that with the last shot he had killed himself, and that they'd find the body there in the building somewhere. But and in fact, when one of the detectives yelled at Captain Fritz, over here, well, I thought, well, they finally found his body, but it was the rifle that the detective had found. You could see part of the muzzle and part of the butt plate sticking from under a box of books there. And then a little later, an officer came in and told Captain Fritz, we've got a man down in Oak Cliff. And they didn't immediately link this up with the assassination. It was like an altogether isolated incident. I recall that they reacted to this. They said his name is Tippett, and at first, they were all cast down because there was apparently an extroverted policeman named Tippett that they all knew and liked, and they were kind of relieved to hear it was not him but the other Tippett who had been killed. Apparently, J.D. was a quiet sort of man, and he was not well known to these detectives. But then a little later, Roy Truly, the manager of the school book building, came in and announced that one of his workers had not reported back after lunch, and his name was Lee Oswald. And so things kind of dragged along, and after a while I decided I'd better get back to the office and write a story. By then, I was told I could leave the building, but I couldn't get back in. So Tom and I kind of enjoyed the exclusive story about as long as we could, and then, but I had to get back to the office to write. And I began walking back to the Dallas Morning News, and that name began to sound familiar. Lee Oswald. And then I remembered 3 or 4 years earlier, I'd been working at the Fort Worth Press, the old Fort Worth Press, and had written several stories about this Marine who had defected to Russia. I'd interviewed his brother and interviewed his mother. His name was Lee Harvey Oswald. And I snapped, But by the time I got back to the office, Lee Oswald had been identified by the wire stories and everywhere, and so there was that exclusive didn't last very long. And anyhow, after that, the days all kind of just ran together. I still have difficulty sorting them out because it was one of those, as newsmen, you've all been on stories like this where you roll out of bed in the morning and put on your shoes and they're still warm.
Thank you, Kent. Thanks very much.